Indra, Varuna. Mandalam 1, Suktam 17. Rishi, Medhatithi Kanva, Devata, Indra, Varuna, Chandas, Gayatri. Mandalam 1, Suktam 17, Rik 1.
Indravarunayoram samrajoravavrini amrulatajidrise.
I verily choose protection of the two kings, Indra and Varuna. They both are gracious to such as us. Of glorious dawns and dark nights. Nature constantly strives to impress upon us the truth about the cyclical behavior of processes, beginning with the everyday experience of the cycle of day and night, the repeated waxing and waning of the moon, the annual apparent northward-southward journey of the sun, and the resultant cycle of seasons. The recurrent manner in which life propagates from a seed to a fully grown specimen that produces seeds before evanescing into nihility, the seeds produced by it continuing this cycle. The recognition of this fact is what leads us to cope with the inconsistencies of life and births the sentiment of hope, as well as expressions of optimism, such as every dark night has a glorious dawn to follow. The unsaid realization that every glorious dawn also has a dark night to follow is conveniently relegated to the backstage in the service of hope. It is exactly this conceptual conviction, without any surreptitious backstaging, that is conveyed by this verse. Indra and Varuna, representing the two extreme possibilities of a cyclical process, are given equal prominence that they deserve, and the word hope is assigned a new connotation, that of unqualified acceptance, while happiness, together with sadness, metamorphoses to a new state of being termed bliss. Mandalam 1, Suktam 17, Rik 2.
Gantarahistomasehavam viprasya mavanah Bhattarajarshanina.
Because you both are those that come for protection to a call of wise seer like me, supporters of seeing men. Mortal seers and super seers. Though every day has its significance with its unique brew of deliverables that is to be accepted, consumed, and experienced, life in general can be imagined to have two broad divisions. One of growth in every manner of development, and the other of decay with similar over and undertones. One is full of optimism, idealism, and anticipation, while the other becomes progressively depressed, despondent, and morose. Seers who recognize this phenomenon to be just two sides of the same coin endeavor to share this realization with both sections of the divide, only to be doubted or even reviled in some instances by a majority of either section. Mortal seers, who are just that, mortals, should also be subject to the consequent ramifications of this reality, perhaps physically affected as much as any other mortal, but psychologically to a lesser degree than non-seers. But when these excrescences, albeit relatively insignificant from a seer point of view, do inevitably manifest, seers too have to seek refuge under the protection of a super-seer, who can only be an immortal. And given the circumstance, which could be a better set of immortals than the unrelated by birth twins? Indra, who is also equated with Mitra, and Varuna, who personify the very concept in focus that the mortal seers strive to convey. The verse describes precisely this situation, the predicament of mortal seers and its resolution. Mandalam 1, Suktam 17, Rik 3.
अनुकामम् तत्त्वयेषामिन्द्रावरुणराय तावाग्नेदिष्ठमीमहे.
You both, Indra and Varuna, virtues as desired, do be satisfied. Verily, we desire you both very near.
Myth, a distorted distillate of reality. Complete acceptance of the hierarchies of existence, along with responsibilities and privileges of each station of being in its established logical order, brings with it a deep kinship with the conceptualized entities that grace each of those stations, which in turn breeds concern about their welfare and well-being. This manifest sentiment of kinship and concern in humans is conspicuous in their propensity to personify every phenomenon and project their own manner of considerations, aspirations, despondencies, and other tendencies upon them. This proclivity instills a sense of belonging with the activities of the universe, together with the inevitable eventuality of distress at any misstep that is also equally unavoidable, being part of the script of reality under the jurisprudence of Indra and Varuna. Myths are born of this general human demeanor, their implications being slightly distorted reflections of distilled reality, and are as important and useful in the realization of truth as contemporary science is, with its abstract and impersonal approach. The infallibility of this correlation is stressed upon by the verse. The concern that the immortals themselves need to be satisfied with the manner in which the universe progresses, as the mortal seers are, is ventured to be expressed, which means to say that the desires of immortals too are bound by and to their respective mandates. Mandalam 1, Suktam 17, Rik 4.
युवाकुहिषीणाम् युवाकुसुमतीनाम् भूयामवाजदाम्नाम्.
Because we would want of powers belonging to both of you, of right thinkings belonging to both of you, of bestowing grace. Source of grace. The unconscious mind regulates a host of body activities that we are not aware of. Internally, it controls the rhythmic breathing activity that cleanses our blood, the cadency of the heart to pump blood through body parts and organs, the coordination of its actions and sensory information by transmitting signals to and from different parts of its body. Any lapse or stumble is immediately detected and corrective measures are taken. Externally, it processes signals from objects in the environment to determine whether the object, if inanimate, is beneficial to the body or not, and if animate, whether it is a friend or a foe. In essentiality, this is to know whether an activity encountered that is out of the normal is right or wrong from the point of view of the self. As the definition of self expands from being centered on an individual to those of realms beyond it, perspectives change. To begin with, it moves to being centered in a family, then to a community, to a state, to the global collective, which includes everything that considers this collective to be its abode, and then on to the universe as a whole. The notion of right or wrong transforms to that of truth or untruth, where truth sustains and untruth weakens and destroys universal business. Immortals, being the upholders of truth, seers who aspire to immortality, seek their grace to attain this ideal ability of their role models. Grace cannot logically be something that is generated externally. Each of us must be generating grace for ourselves from our unconscious recognition of our activities being right or wrong, which also doubles up as our activity log. As long as we are cognizant of duality, our grace is reflected back upon us from an imagined ideal. When that ideal is attained, there is no need for grace, for we are it. Mandalam 1, Suktam 17, Rik 5.
इन्द्रः सहस्रदाम्नाम् वरुणः संस्यानाम् प्रगर्भवत्युक्त्याः.
Indra is an inspiration of 1,000 bestowals of truth, Varuna an avower of desirables. Good cop, bad cop. The verse clearly reiterates the primary roles of Indra and Varuna in their dual capacity of being administrators of the universe. While Indra bestows the wealth of truth in abundance, Varuna strictly supervises its proper usage by those upon whom it has been bestowed. Indra rides a chariot drawn by speedy steeds or upon an elephant of generous proportions. The two rides together representing speedy delivery of generous benevolent abundance. Varuna, on the other hand, is depicted to ride upon a crocodile with its large open jaws bearing multiple rows of long, sharp teeth. A picture of great severity and fearsome discipline. Perhaps it is this visualization of roles of Indra and Varuna and their respective rides that has given rise to the good cop, bad cop maxim used by law enforcers to bring erring outliers of society to heel and turn a new page in their lives. Even conscientious parents use this all-pervading maxim to regulate errant behavior of growing children, where generally the mother plays Indra, or the good cop, and the father, Varuna, the bad cop, though there are instances to the contrary. And of course, one can visualize the disorder and chaos that society, the world, and the vast universe will find itself in without the active participation of the two immortals, Indra and Varuna. Mandalam 1, Suktam 17, Rik 6.
तयोरिदवासा वयम् सदेमहि च धीमहि स्यादुतः प्ररेचनम्.
Assuredly, with protection from them, we would want to acquire and perhaps hold the overflowing abundance in continuance. Ignorance and omniscience. Another acknowledgement of the hierarchical position of mortals in the universal order with its imperative limitations is this hymnal verse. Vedic thought declares that the truths of the material world are at best stepping stones to approach and attain the supreme truth. Any knowledge that binds us to desire and consequently leads us to exploitative and self-destructive doings is considered the lowest rung of the knowledge ladder, or alpa. This notion, perhaps, caused the framing of that adage, the devil is in the details, the exploitative tendencies being equated with the devil. But in duality, the malevolent devil, Asura, and the benevolent immortals, Deva, are inevitabilities, both being props upon which the playbook of the universe has been written. The verse is then both an acceptance of this fact and the articulation of the yearning to rise above both to the realm of pure consciousness, knowing fully well that this is an impossibility in the state of being a mortal. Because each of us have a responsibility to fulfill of enacting the script in the ordained playbook by paragraph, sentence, word, comma, and period. Perhaps this is the notion that prompts the inclusion of the potentially conditional term perhaps in the verse by the seer-composer. It is the parallel to the state of consciousness, sarvagyam, in the mortal realm that can be aspired for and that seers seek. Mandalam 1, Suktam 17, Rik 7.
इन्द्रावरुणवामहम् भुवे चित्राय राधसे अस्मान् सुजिग्युषस्कृतम्.
Indra and Varuna, I call both of you for various favors. Do make us good victors. The tightrope walk of living. Worldly knowledge, of course, has its uses. The primary use that it is put to is to adequately fulfill our preordained responsibilities. If the reasoning provided for the notion of grace to be something that we confer upon ourselves were to be valid, as discussed in an earlier verse, then a similar reasoning will imply that we ordain our respective roles to ourselves according to our actions in this mortal frame or earlier ones. The collective of all individual ordainments then becomes the universal ordainment, from the beginning of creation to the end of dissolution, and the collective of all individual consciousness being the supreme consciousness. This would be a bottoms up approach to the portrayal of the universal scheme that would and should dovetail perfectly into the generally articulated top down approach to the evolution of existence. Worldly knowledge also provides us with a non experiential notion about what the state of singularity might be and awakens the urge to experience it. Knowledge morphs into ignorance only when ego establishes hegemony over it, a condition that is sought to be avoided in the pursuit of the ever elusive state of singularity. Ego, too, without its hegemonic inclinations, is a necessity for living, for responsibility has no meaning without ego. Living, then, is a tightrope walk, easily and effortlessly accomplished if there is clarity of thought and a purpose to provide the necessary impetus to express it. Mandalam 1, Suktam 17, Rik 8.
Indra Varuna Vamsika Sandishu Dhishva Asmadhyam Sarma Yachatam.
Indra and Varuna, now, in both of your thoughts wishing to obtain, do grant bliss to us. Death and the notion of time. Time, like many other notions, is a creature of duality, yet another formulation of a measure, its need attributable primarily to the recognition of death as an inevitability, and like other such propositions concerning the conceptions of distance, area, volume, weight, and many more, to address that irresistible compulsion in duality dwellers for comparative evaluation, essentially to establish and promote differentials and distinctions like great or small, high and low, long and short, etc. The universal propensity in mortals to circumvent a rule for personal gratification can be seen to operate with the consensually established standard of time as well. Generally, the young would want time to gallop at a faster pace. The old would wonder if it could be delayed, while the in-betweens wouldn't care about its rapidity of progress. In the perspective of the immortals, there is no death, hence there is no time, no need for archives or history, no requirement for establishing significance or insignificance. There is only here and now. And that is all that matters. The seer's urge for immediacy is a description of this perspective of the immortals and their own weakness to thwart time as mortals, and to seek a similar outlook as the immortals for themselves too, of being blissfully prosperous in truth. Mandalam 1, Suktam 17, Rik 9.
Ravamasnoti Juttudirindra Varunaya Bhuve Yavridhase Sadastutim.
May good praise, I call out, approach upon both of you, Indra and Varuna, which praising you both together accomplishes. Deva, Asura, and existence. If this concluding verse of the hymn were to be seen as summarizing the thoughts expressed in the other verses that emphasize perceived benevolence of Indra and apparent malevolence of Varuna to be complementary in nature, and in this context, the concluding phrase of the verse, praising you both together accomplishes, were to be focused upon, then seers would perceive both supposed good and ostensible bad as necessities of existence, a parallel to the notion being the yin and yang of Chinese Taoism, and praise or acknowledge both with equal ardor for their contributions to existence. The legend of Samudra Manthanam was perhaps created precisely to impress and celebrate this conception. It required both devas and asuras to churn the ocean of milk, and from this churning emerged both benignant and malignant objects. Which adjective applied to which object was dependent on the standpoint of the observer's inherent inclinations. Interestingly, Varuna is classified as an asura in some texts. The reality that today exists with all its dichotomies, we yet breathe and can adequately use our senses to navigate life, is enough cause to celebrate the moment. Also, it is there because it has to be. This is the simple yet profound truth that every seer conveys and is enshrined in the Vedas as well.